Well, Chidozie, as an artist, is a playwright and a spoken word artist, a poet, a writer in general. I think one thing Chidozie has always been concerned about is bringing the ordinary to light. So, talking about the human experience at its core and blowing things like forgiveness or insecurities, to bringing them to the forefront and just telling them as real as they can be. Okay, I'll put it this way. There's a poet that once said, I think it was Black Ice, yes, that once said that a picture says 1,000 words. Now, if you use 1,000 words to create or paint a picture, that is a beautiful exchange. And so having someone say something or in a way that you wouldn't say it regularly is what really connects me to spoken word. Well, for a long time, I'm one of those writers who never feel that their work is complete. And I had to tell myself, okay, I need to store these poems sort of in a time capsule and enjoy them in a way that they tell my story and my journey. And so I decided to create an album to tell of now and to tell of, how I feel, what I think, or where I'm going, or like my journey over time. So yeah. So Spectrum is a combination of light, sound, just to, in a way that it harmonizes, in a way that complements each other, in a way that doesn't cancel each other out or doesn't absorb each other. So there is room for all types of light and there's room for all frequency of sound. So I picked Spectrum because it kind of shows metaphorically how people can be different or coexist. Working with different people was I've always worked with the village. Anything I want to do, I always bring like different people's experiences to the table. And working with people like Femi, I think Femi was the start of everything. And Femi called me one day and said, "Oh, Chidozie, I want to produce your album." And I was like, "Oh, Femi, I'm actually putting together a body of work." So it felt like we were connected, and we understood that it was time. And that was the start. And then moving down the line, I think people like Ini and Femi, first of all, is an artist. And when you're working with an artist, you know that they see things the way you see them, or they see it differently, but appreciate it on the same level with which you appreciate, the art. And so it was a no-brainer working with Femi. Coming to Ini is a brilliant artist, and telling Ini that I wanted all types of colors in one painting was as vague as possible. And I didn't realize I wanted it to be. Ini was so individualistic. Like she's so individualistic in a way that she knows what she wants. She knows her signature or her style. And so when I gave her the idea, I still expected it to be organized chaos in a way. And Ini gave me the most chaotic thing on a canvas. And when it came back to me, I was like, okay. And I had to start thinking about, like, I had to stay with the painting for me to be able to see it. And when I stayed with it, I could see all the possibilities of all the chaos and everything happening. And then Princely was the one that brought everything to life. So Princely is the visual artist and visual design artist. And I was speaking with Princely and I was like, this is what I mean. I said, okay, let's change this thing up. Let's switch it up. What does it look like in black and white? Let's take out all the colors. What does it look like in black and white? And then we realized that with the painting as colored as it is, it looks very chaotic and it looks like all the colors are battling each other out. But when it came to black and white, it just felt like a mood, like it was just a cloud, like everything had become one. And so that idea of switching from colored to black and white in this design art, I had to bring it up and say, Princely, this is what I'm talking about. You're going from a chaotic place, and if you just switch and take out the colors, it's pretty much metaphoric in a way that if you see the world in color, you may be so lost, in what you want to see, or the interpretation of everything, what it could be. But if you take out everything and just see it for the way it is, even if you're colorblind and your visual is black and white, you can appreciate the color when it finally comes in. Yeah, then Dari, City Monster. Dari is the kind of artist, or the kind of engineer who actually just mixes based on his heart. He listens to the project, listens to it, sees what it or hears what it says and feels it, and then he does his mixing. I remember the first record he sent to me. I think it was Harmony, and it sounded very commanding, and the inflection of my voice and intonation was increasing along as it went by, and he started putting things like echo in it. And when he brought it the first time, I was like, I know that this is what the tone is, but what do you really feel when you listen to this? And he was like, I see what you mean. And he brought the second one, and I was like, yes, this is what I'm talking about. So that was just the only time that we went back and forth. Everything else, when the first time he brought Aninga, first take, I was like, yes, this is it, and I was sold. So that was Dari. Photography. Oggs is someone that shows you who you are in photography. Like, he would literally take a photo of you and you see everything, the beauty and the flaws. That's the really big superpower Oggs has. And Deji is he's big on aesthetics and design and, high fashion, so to speak. And Korede is I've been behind his lens, and he sees detail in the very little things. And so I wanted these three people to do the various parts of this project. Harmony started with a semi-brave. That was where the entire concept was. And imagine a cartoon. A semi-brave just goes from a semicircle, or like a full circle, or an oval shape, and it folds into itself, gets a stem out, turns into a quarter, and then a quiver, and then a semi-demi quiver, and keeps going, and then there's a stem, and there's another semi-brave that goes through the same transformation. And in a scale, they connect and hold hands. And that's how I started picturing how music comes together in harmony. And it was pretty easy for me to write harmony once I got that visual, in my head. And so I just started following the transformation from a semi-brave to a whole music chord.
When they ask me why I stayed, I tell them that I had lost too much of myself to love. I didn't have any left to gamble with. It's 2 a.m. and we can't sleep. Love and I gather hopes in an urn, desperately trying to
This I
replace the
started
lost.
writing a long time ago. I think I wrote I Live Close to Love about 3 years ago, and it has gone through a lot of iterations. I performed I Live Close to Love in the first version, and now I had to like edit it to, put in the album. But I Live Close to Love is I have to give shout out or credit to Phil K and Sarah K's joint poem. Uh, Now I Live Close to Love is kind of talking about how people see love, right? I wanted the album to, first of all, address the concept of love. If I say I love you, what do I mean? What are my intentions? What is my understanding of love to begin with? And initially, from the start of I Live Close to Love all the way to like probably midway to the poem, it talks about how possessive someone can be of the concept of love. Love is not something to hold or possess. Love is free. It's bigger than any of us. It's bigger than I could ever be. And having that in mind, it's when you see it the way, for what it is, just love and not something to hold or not something you own or possess, then you start understanding that you can actually be symbiotic and, have a mutual understanding with love, not with a person or whoever, just with the concept of love. And so when I say, um, I'm sitting outside my window just learning, it's kind of like you watching love and understanding that it doesn't belong to you and it belongs to everyone and no one at the same time. It's Yeah, that's pretty much how I live Christy Love Carey. So Aninga, I wrote Aninga as a double entendre um, to what I was going through at the time. I wouldn't say what it means to me because I want people to interpret it as something new or something different or what it means to them. Aninga is more like talking about what you've always been called and what you find out you are and having to understand both. And sometimes both are ugly and sometimes both are beautiful and sometimes you hate one and you like the other. It's the journey of finding yourself through everything you hate and love about yourself. And I recently had a friend, a childhood friend, who called me about the poem Aninga and was like, thank you. I wanted to hear that. Just because the person is biracial and didn't know where to fit in. And so the air for him meant the whiteness and the deep for him meant the blackness. And he had to struggle with all of that. And what the Aninga teaches is that you are both and you are you. And I think that's where, like, for me, it was two things. And but for someone, it could be something specific. And that's the beauty of the poem. The art of getting up is very therapeutic for me. Um, when I find myself going into a place in a bad state, a state of depression or a downtime, I tend to do this thing where I pick up my phone and, record myself just speaking and talking about why I'm there. So I first of all describe how I feel. And then I ask myself questions. Why do I feel the way I feel? And it puts things in perspective as to why I'm here, what matters, what doesn't matter. Is this enough to make me feel like this? And all that. It works for me. It may not work for a lot of people, but it does work for me. And I ask myself a lot of questions. And sometimes something as simple as what would Jesus do, or what would Jay-Z do? It just puts me in the shoes of someone who I admire or respect and say, they must have seen this thing too, and how did they come out of it? How did they deal with this? And of course, I don't go knocking on their doors and asking them. I could ask Jesus, but I can't ask Jay-Z. But it makes me feel like I can actually take control of, how I feel to an extent. And somehow it protects my mental health. So when I say, and to come out of those, I would ask myself what I need and sometimes walk me through what I actually need. And sometimes I could need a friend. Sometimes I could need more than one friend. And so when I say you would need a hand, maybe more, it comes from a place. When I say petals, pick up the petals from the mud, it comes from a place. When I say your past is broken road, wear it on your shoulder. You are the captain of your soul. What came to my mind was yellow tracks on the road, and breaking that and putting on your shoulder. It's like a captain's shoulder badge, and it just tells you you are new and you can turn tragedy into triumph. And that's what the art of getting up is about.
When the morning comes and the light leaves you bare and speechless at your own reflection, you will taste the happy ending turn sour in your mouth. With a
Home
choice to
is
spit
special to
or
me.
swallow.
Home is, I think it
These
was,
words came from my mother.
I don't know if I wrote it for me or my mother, because it was inspired by my mother, of course. Home is pretty much a string of advices brought together to form a poem. It is special because it pretty much reminds me of the experiences growing up. There was a time where I would go back home and we will sit through the night, probably till 2 or 3 a.m., and just talking about my experiences and what she's been through and what I've been through and how we're able to survive and get through it. In those times, you realize that she grew up with, she grew up with me pretty much. And there are things you can't say, of course. There are maybe things you don't want to overshare, but she knew early on that I could not be tamed, so to speak. And she wasn't the kind of mother to say, oh, how do we build a bigger roof, or how do we keep this boy from flying? Um, what she was more like was, how do I become the wind that directs him, in the way of God, or something in that sense. And I think it was special to me, you know. And so there are things that she doesn't even remember telling me. And I remember when I performed this, on TV, and I sent her a message and I said, "This is for you." And I don't think she knew half of the things, in there. And I remember every single thing. And sometimes she would tell me about my grandmother and tell me how she was ill and then woke up and she was all right. It was like she dreamt of a surgical procedure, and in the morning she became all right, and then she went to the doctor and they found out that whatever they found before is no longer there. And those kinds of miracles, and just reminding me of where I come from. And so at the end of the poem, when I say, when I finally come home, she saves a night to go through my stories and just tell me that in the morning it'll be okay. So she always said that. She said, when the morning comes, you'll be sorry you worried the night before. So it was really special to me, and it's something I hold on to every day. The world is round. I think what year? I think it was in 2013 or 2014 that Kate Blanchett won the Oscar for Blue Jasmine. And on the stage in her acceptance speech, she was talking about equality and, women pay, equality in women compensation, in female, in the industry in general. And she ended the statement by saying, or the whole speech by saying, "The world is round, people." This is holding the statue. "The world is round, people. The world is round." And that struck a chord in my head, and I just locked it away. And somehow, when I remembered everything, and I'm, remembering equality and remembering, like, and will I say, yeah. So I remember that statement, that the world is round, that if we try to build corners, we're just doing it because of our own selfish desires, or whatever, out of whatever vain, interpretation of what we think the world is. And the poem was originally supposed to be her voice saying the world is round, like a clip from that speech. And then I go on to write a lengthy poem about how the world is round. But then I felt, no, I can do that for a TED talk or something that would do a full poem injustice. And I just wanted it to be the world is round and just echo that and why I think the world is round.
So, let's paint outside the lines in unbridled, non-conforming strokes, where others for a long time have called home, where no form of beauty is held to ransom,
Acrylic
but
is
every
sort of a
moment
continuation of the
brushing
world
the
is round. I
illusion
put
of
those two
contrast.
together because I always perform them together on stage. And acrylic is pretty much saying you have, it's bringing everything down to the individual, to one side versus the other. How do you look at someone? When I said step into their shoes, like read about the ones they lost, learn to fly with the wings you once shut down. Those are the things that I'm talking about. Like, what perception have you had about the other side? You know, of course, the other side meaning anything that you're not familiar with. And how can you leave your comfort zone and enter that world and then see how difficult it is or the harm that you've done, so to speak. And if you ever shut their wings, can you actually fly? If you were in their shoes, will you be able to fly? And listen to their heartbeat. Does it sound different when there is joy from when there is fear? And that entire um, transition of going in and out of words just to understand another person is, again, tying it back to harmony, is the concept of connection, of connecting two musical notes together to see how they actually work. We could be identical, but we are so different. And what makes you tick, I may not understand. It is my duty, not yours. It is my duty to go into your world and try to understand it.
This is for the geeks. For the high
Misfits.
and
Misfits. I think
intellectuals
Misfits
who
is one of the
regard
first poems
kindness
I
and
ever wrote.
praise
And I
over
just wrote it
everything.
because I was just tired of the world being so judgmental all the time. I'm like, you don't know this person's story. And I wanted to just shine light on the individual stories. Again, that is what I am about. Every time I perform Misfits, it reminds me of why I'm a poet. If I talk about a boy who is happy despite not having shoes for school, and I talk about a man who has lost his wife to cancer and is so aggrieved. These two people have so, we can't compare their differences and their reaction to what they don't have. But then they are human and you understand them the way they are. And I wanted to celebrate that, you know, just to say you could be anything and not just yourself. You could be whoever you want to be, you know, and misfits over time, there's just so much joy when I perform it or when I think about it. And it, although it is not the length and breadth or the spectrum of every single person on this earth, it's not even close to nowhere near it. But then it just celebrates diversity and celebrates people and understanding, like even your body and your bank account is what? It's just part of, you know, life. It's not exactly who you are. And even if it's who you are, embrace it. Like just be you. And it doesn't, you don't have to conform to anyone's standards. And it's easier said than done. But when you think about it, if there are two people in this world that are supposed to do the same exact thing, then that's some redundancy. And I think God is too big and too intelligent for redundancy. Spectrum is supposed to endear people to see beyond a frame, right? It's supposed to challenge them to look outward. growing up, you're influenced by what your parents told you, or what the environment made you to be, or conditioned you to be, or what the TV said, or what the internet said, or how other people had opinions of who you should be. And there are things that were new to you. I think it Nelson Mandela that said that people were not born to hate, and people learn to hate. So if you can learn to hate, you can also learn to love. And spectrum is just a form of endearment to say, okay, how can I love if I don't understand? How can I understand if I haven't actually sought to understand, or if I haven't paid attention, or if I haven't listened? And so it's just that first step to listen. Hi, my name is Chiadozi. I'm a poet. I'm a writer, and I just put out a body of work called Spectrum. Spectrum is aimed at celebrating humanity and people's differences and diversity and inclusion, and it gives you that audacity to just forgive and to be you. And yeah, I love the entire concept of diversity, and I've always been a huge fan of being human. So it's available on all streaming platforms. Go check it out. iTunes, Amazon, Spotify, Deezer. It's available on all platforms. So check it out and let me know what you think. You can reach me on Instagram, on Twitter at Chi Edozie, on Twitter with 3 E's, on Instagram with 2 E's. I can be anything I want to be.